So thank everyone for coming. I'm Emily and I'm the office assistant for the sustainability office. And today we are going to look at past sustainability fellows and what path they've taken. So the moderators are Madeline Beller. She's the current sustainability office, and then Lindsay Bull, she's the current sustainability office intern, and then Atlas Jackman, they're the current sustainability office intern as well.
So up first, we have Bella Lee, who currently works as a development officer for a nonprofit art center. And her favorite event is Bottom County, which we don't know if it's going to happen or not this year, but potentially. So we're hanging on for dear life for that one. Next slide, please. So we have a couple questions for Isabella. The first question is, what was your master's program in Seoul?
Let me just unmute myself. So my master's program was at Ewha Women's University in Seoul, and it was for international international development. And that was really focusing on human rights issues, sustainability, also as a development issue worldwide, and also conflict among ethnic groups.
So very interesting. What made you decide to pursue a different career after your experience as the fellow?
So I would say, an unorthodox choice for the Sustainability Fellow. I was a history major, religious studies minor at St. Mary's. I had never done anything that was with the Sustainability Club. I wasn't in the environmental studies program, but I was the head of the St. Mary's Farm. And I was also very heavily involved in SGA my final year and really knew the ins and outs of administration, which is why I ended up getting the position, I was told. So I really looked at being the Sustainability Fellow as an experience that would help me really explore an area that I was passionate about, but didn't study, and that I did want to pursue in some way afterwards. And that's something that I did study later on in my international development work. But I've always been more interested in human rights as sort of an entire field rather than just sustainability itself.
Next question, how and why did you decide to go to Seoul to finish your master's?
I did my entire master's program there, actually, but I chose to go to Seoul for a few reasons. One is financial. If you are looking at doing a master's program abroad in South Korea specifically, you're probably going to be spending just on tuition I was in a pricey program, which was a little over $6,000 for a semester. So, and that's for a master's degree program at a very reputable university in Asia. So that was one of the reasons. And another was, it was international development, and I really wanted to get a different perspective on international development. South Korea had developed rather quickly from the 1960s into the 2000s. So they really understand what it's like to be on both ends of the spectrum, both receiving aid and then also giving aid. So yeah.
Very cool. What did you learn by completing your master's there?
I definitely got the different perspective I was looking for. If I had stayed in the US, it would have really just cemented what I already know, which is a very Western-centric perspective on world politics and how people should be using the money that they receive in aid. It's very paternalistic. By going to Korea, I was able to get that other perspective, but also I'd say half of the students in my program were women who worked in government agencies in developing countries. So I was working with women that were going to be going back home and really changing their communities in very specific ways. So that was exciting. And I would never have gotten that if I had stayed in the DC area.
Could you talk a little bit more about what your current job is and how your master's program sort of propelled you into that position?
I wouldn't say it's totally propelled me into that. I had graduated in the summer and then was looking for a job during the pandemic. And I also wasn't even in the US, I was in Korea. So that really threw a wrench into things. And I ended up in the position as the development officer for a nonprofit arts center, which is kind of like a microcosm of this larger idea of international development. It's just development and improving your community on a smaller scale. So within this area right outside of Camden, New Jersey. So I can apply some of the things that I've learned, but certainly not all of them to what I'm doing now.
You kind of spoke on this a little bit when you said that you were in charge of working on the farm, but what other sort of work did you do while you were here on the farm?
Yeah, well, when Cyrus was the sustainability fellow, he got me into composting, and I was doing that every week with the sustainability crew, which was really important for me as the farm manager, and then later on as the fellow, because that's a huge part of what the office does, and it's very hands-on and tactile, and you really need to know what you're doing there. So that was a huge part of it. And then also I came into the farm my first year, kind of, and worked very closely with Kate while she was still alive. And it was really at the end of her life that I was taking over the farm and then became sustainability fellow. So a lot of work I was doing was trying to preserve how everything worked and trying to figure out how to make the way that the farm operated more sustainable for people moving in and out of the program.
Fantastic. We really appreciate the work you've done.
Not sure how successful I was with what I was doing. I know a lot of people after me did a lot more work that made it into what it is now. So it's been exciting to see.
Awesome. Thanks for talking to us.
Yep.
Next slide.
Next up, we have Lisa Campbell, who was the Sustainability Fellow from 2010 to 2011. She currently works in communications and community outreach, and her favorite SMCM event was Midnight Breakfast. Next slide, please. So what were some challenges that you faced when you were trying to implement the to-go box? I read that you had been the one who implemented that. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Great question, Lindsay. I have to be honest, I don't feel like I experienced too many challenges when I was implementing the To-Go Box program. And that is a testament to the incredible work that students and the past fellows before me did to lay the groundwork. The most important thing I learned as the fellow and through my other activities on campus was, how to build on momentum. So, using that baseline of support that already existed, we were pretty able to get it done pretty smoothly. The biggest challenge that I remember was figuring out how to operationalize GSMRF, which had only been passed in the form that it's currently known as today, the previous school year. So that was what we used to get the funding for the program, and we needed to figure out, just the logistics of how we're going to calculate the reimbursement and the cost savings, and how we would distribute them, and work with the dining staff to manage reusing them. And obviously the dining staff had their own health and safety concerns, which are very important, but I'm not an expert to those. What I do know is the trust and goodwill that was built over the previous years really helped for us to work with them and to make the project a success at the time. Obviously now with COVID, things are different, but it was a really great experience.
Awesome. Yeah, kind of going off of that, were staff and students receptive to the to-go box like right away, or was there some pushback at all?
I wouldn't say there was universal support, but there was more than enough support to justify the pilot program, which by all metrics was a success. We had about 400 people enrolled in the pilot program, about a quarter of the student body, maybe 20% of the student body. Throughout all the challenges of getting it going, a lot of people really kept with it. So, I'm so grateful, and I'm always impressed by the St. Mary students' commitment to sustainability.
Thanks. Yeah, we love the to-go box.
Sorry.
No worries. I read that you work at Pepco and work to implement smart meters. Could you tell us more about those and sort of what that's all about?
Sure, absolutely. For some background information, Pepco is the power company that provides electricity to the District of Columbia and Maryland. And they also have customers at sister companies that serve parts of Eastern Maryland and New Jersey. So it's a really big company, and in the late early 2000s and early 2010s, they were embarked on a huge program to upgrade their infrastructure to deliver electricity to customers and improve their service reliability. And before smart meters, how you used electricity and how it got to you and all that were kind of a black box mystery to a lot of people. You know, you had to have someone come to your property every month to read your meter and calculate your bill, and there wasn't really any information about how you used energy. Smart meters, just like a smartphone or any other smart device, have two-way communication. So there's much more real-time data, and that enables a whole slew of customer benefits, from making meter readings remote so that they don't have to have somebody driving to you, to providing you more energy information so you know how you're using electricity and your bill isn't a mystery, and that the company can actually help you take actions to reduce your energy use.
Very cool, thank you. So after your role with Pepco, you changed fields, and I was curious what propelled you into your current position.
That is a really great question, and like Bella, there's it took a bit of a circuitous route, but I'd say that what propelled me to my current position was a mix of necessity at the time, my St. Mary's network, and the skills I honed through a liberal arts education at St. Mary's. My job at Pepco was really great, and I learned a lot, but ultimately it was a contract position. And as everybody entering the working world knows, at a certain point, you need employee benefits like health insurance and fun stuff like that. So, it came to a point where, despite liking the work, I needed to make career changes that would help me personally. And I just want to emphasize real quick that there's nothing wrong with that. You and your personal sustainability is important. You can't pour from an empty cup. So with that knowledge in mind, I switched careers. I happened to get a job at a professional society for biomedical scientists that I heard about from my college roommate. And that opened up a whole new field to me that I knew nothing about. I was a poli-sci major in college. I think I took Disney Bio, and I really didn't know very much about the field and its challenges and how much it really helps people through basic research and through medical research. And through that job, which was kind of an entry-level job at the time, I got positioned to find my current job, which is as a communications manager for a group called the Association for Molecular Pathology. And they're a really wonderful community of people who do molecular testing. They've been in the news a lot for COVID lately, but they also test for inherited conditions or cancer, and a whole slew of other things that you might need medical attention for. But pivoting back to the last point I said, was the skills that I honed at St. Mary's really propelled me to this position, because I learned so much about, having to learn a topic and be able to communicate it effectively, whether that was, Greek history or an environmental concept for sustainability, or how power gets distributed across a grid, or the importance of basic research. So, that helped me create a very valuable and transferable skill set that hopefully I'll use in the sustainability field again someday, but right now have really served me beautifully in my career.
Wonderful. Could you tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day experience is like at your current job?
Sure. So I work in communications, and what I love about communications is kind of what I loved about being the fellow, in that every day is different. Sometimes I'm making videos or creating marketing campaigns. Other times I do ghostwriting and talking points for interviews or for blog posts from our leadership, just talking about what these amazing scientists are doing, and also how their work is helping patients and why that's important. I'm always kind of behind the scenes, so it's kind of intimidating to be in front of the camera for once, but what I do is I help experts tell their story to a layperson audience. Sometimes I help them get an outside perspective when they might be too deep into the weeds about something they care deeply about. So I have to kind of rein it back a little bit so that they can help communicate the most important point that will engage stakeholders and make them care about their issue and come support them.
Well, thank you so much. Who's next?
Okay, we'll introduce the next fellow who was, I believe, one of the first fellows, Zoe Clement, in 08 and 09. They're working right now at a DC charter school as a special education inclusion teacher. And their favorite SMCM spot are the benches that overlook the river in the graveyard. That's one of my favorite spots too, under that big tree. Someone, even like a couple years ago, I was standing on the bench and I like turned around and looked at the tree and someone had a message in a bottle like in a little nook in the tree just to see. I don't know if it's still there. We might have to check. But hey Zoe, welcome. I don't know if you're there, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey. Cool. So our first question for you is that, well, you're a teacher and you work for special education inclusion. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that job is and what you do?
Yeah, so I work at a public charter school in DC, and I'm an 8th grade inclusion teacher. So I co-teach ELA, which is like English, language arts, social studies, and science classes with other teachers. And I also work with smaller groups of students remediating skills in reading.
That's awesome. Good job. Good for you. Since you're a teacher and obviously St. Mary's is a school, do you have any suggestions for trying to get students more interested in sustainability?
Honestly, just making it relevant to them. So whoever it is that you're trying to get interested in sustainability or anything else, just figuring out, well, how does this actually connect to the people I'm trying to connect to? So I don't currently teach an environmental unit since I'm working with, we're teaching more social justice units, but we do teach a genetics unit in the 8th grade, and we're going into the history of Henrietta Lacks and her immortal cells, and the history of the use of those cells at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, which is nearby, and the racialized history of those things. And then the 6th grade studies food and healthy food systems. And they go around the neighborhood and they look at, well, okay, what is available in our neighborhood? What is in the food shed? What is, where are the stores that sell vegetables, and how many of those stores are within, half a mile of the school?
I wish I went to this school. That sounds really cool. I didn't learn about any of those things in middle school. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have a great team.
That's awesome. And you mentioned that you're an activist in DC. So what are some of the causes that you're really passionate about? And I can see you get to kind of incorporate that into your like lesson planning, which is really awesome.
Yeah. Right now I am working, so at my school, we're taking part in the Black Lives Matter Year of Action. And so we do a lot of racial justice organizing at my school and also in the community. Last year, my kids, the last 2 years, they went to the Capitol and lobbied for better gun control legislation. This year, I have some students who are really interested in queer and trans activism and making films about that experience. And then mutual aid is the other thing that I'm working on a lot right now, just trying to get community members' needs met. But a lot of that is also organizing. So it's like once we have basic needs met, it's like from there, then we can start learning together about building better systems. And I would also just name that sustainability in my mind has, sustainability isn't just the environmental leg, it's also the social justice and the economic leg. And to me, that's so crucial. Like, we can't separate any of those things from each other. So I feel like even though I'm not directly teaching an environmental science class, I am very much still working on sustainability and trying to figure out what that looks like with my students.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's absolutely important. And I think that's like an important distinction to make, or not distinction, but it's like all these things aren't mutually exclusive. So thanks. And you kind of touched on this last question, so I might just ask you instead. I mean, you were one of the first fellows at St. Mary's, so kind of like, what did the climate of sustainability, like what did it look like before there was this position?
So Mare and I, who's also on this call, were co-fellows at the time. And I feel like, Mare, please feel free to jump in, because we were at the same time sort of trying to figure that out together. SEEK was very active. Do you all still have SEEK? The Environmental Student Club? Oh, wow. Okay. It's actually really amazing hearing everyone talk, because the campus farm was something that Mare and her husband helped co-create with Kate. And then Bottom County Festival started at Chancellor's, which, that was something that we started building the year after I was a sustainability fellow, and then had to sort of abandon. And it's so amazing to see it still happening. And so I would say that a lot of it was really student driven. Mm-hmm. There were faculty who were on board, but it took a lot of student legwork to get initiatives on the table and get everything going. And then there were some amazing faculty like Kate, who did a lot of support for that work.
Yeah. She will be missed. The farm is an amazing place, and that's a great place for like her to represent now, Well, thanks so much, Zoe. I'm sure we'll come back to you later on, but I think we're gonna move on to JJ.
All right, so we have JJ Walker, who is currently based in Australia, working for an NGO focusing on natural resource management. And her favorite SMCM event was the annual bouldering competition. Fun fact, I just started climbing this year at the climbing wall, and I hurt my shoulder really badly, but I missed it so much, and I'm trying to get back into it. So hopefully you can give me some climbing tips if we have time. Next slide.
Oh, well, I'm really sorry to hear about your shoulder.
Thank you.
Well, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm just sort of dipping in really quickly. It is 9 o'clock in the morning here, and I'm actually in the middle of my work day. Shout out to Hey Shelby, First Left, QA, and Hey Tom, and Hey Cyrus, one of my interns. So, oh no, yeah, we worked on, not one of my interns, but still cool guy.
Well, thanks for taking time out of your workday to join us tonight.
No, it's okay. Don't worry.
Our first question is, can you tell us a little bit about the Protecting Biodiversity Project?
Yeah, sure. So I am currently a team lead for the Biodiversity Project, or for the Biodiversity Program here. We work on a number of different areas, including threatened species, threatened ecological communities. The project that I'm currently working on is about improving Brigalow corridors. So you guys have all heard of the island biogeography theory. You would have picked that up in ecology. Basically, my project is about improving vegetation condition in grazing properties across Queensland, which is sort of the Florida of Australia, if you will. And so, yeah, it's great. It's really exciting. I spend a lot of time out in field. Just to give you an idea of what my week was, last week I was out in the middle of the bush being attacked by spiders. And this week I was on a beach looking for turtles. And then I was in a 4-hour meeting for planning and grant management. So, and then on top of all that, it's just normal admin stuff. But realistically, NRM is fantastic. If if any of you guys are interested in working in the sort of NGO space, especially abroad or over here, you're welcome to reach out. So.
Fantastic. And just so everyone knows that's attending, the emails of everyone are on their bio pages. So if you didn't catch it, you can ask in the chat and we can send it to you. You kind of answered the second question, so I'm just going to move on to the third one. How does natural resource management tie into sustainability?
Well, there's there's a concept that we use across NRM called the triple bottom line, right? So something has to be economically and socially and environmentally favorable. And what we try and do in NRM is sort of kick goals in all of those things. So most of the initiatives that we suggest are win-win-wins for everyone, right? Like, so you have a grazing practice, for example, that makes a enterprise more profitable, but it's also better for the environment, and then it's also better for the longevity of the project. For example, like it makes, graziers have more pride in their property, or more willing to pass it down to their grandchildren and stuff like that. So the whole concept of NRM is preserving resources sustainably for the future. And as a result, it means that, we incorporate a lot of the concepts of sustainability. So a lot of sustainability is about getting those little wins, and accruing those, and eventually you get to a point where you're actually seeing real change. Like, like you guys were talking about the to-go boxes. Like, I remember that being a really big deal, and that was so good. And back when I was Sustainability Fellow, we had just started composting, like the composting program on the farm. And those sorts of little things that everyone just sort of takes for granted now and are totally normal. 10 years ago, they would have been totally radical. And we had to, sort of fight the administration to be like, yeah, this is something that we want to do and something that we're doing. So yeah, just, look for those wins. Look for those wins for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, and I'm sure Lindsay and Maddie can attest to that. We're always fighting very small battles, trying to get things done. We have a lot of passion, but a lot of times we're being told no. But it is nice when we are able to get things done. So how did you find yourself working in Australia?
Well, I actually studied abroad here for my St. Mary's semester. And then, came back, did my master's. Originally back then, I was, it's embarrassing to say, I was doing marine science like everyone else on Earth. So, I basically came here and did my master's and sort of winged it. And even though that caused a lot of anxiety and stress, it just ended up, I guess, sort of working out. I found an organization that was willing to take me on as a volunteer because of the skills that I had learned at St. Mary's about writing and communicating science, and especially, being a multidimensional human being, not just being, somebody who's only good at one thing, like being a really well-rounded person got my foot in the door. And then I proved my worth, I guess. And so I went from a volunteer to, oh, hey, we have some work. Would you like to be paid for this? So part-time casual. And then eventually, I got a position, and now I've been working my way up. So I'm a senior biodiversity project officer, and now I'm the team lead on top of that. So I'm currently running all of the biodiversity projects for 146,000 square kilometers of Queensland.
Wow, that's a lot of work. Is Australia...
And I talk really fast, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Is Australia home base now, or do you have plans to return to the US?
Look, I'll be honest, things are really great over here right now. Everything is actually really normal. There's no impacts from COVID, really. We can travel, we can, go out and go to bars, go to parties. I'm going to a concert tomorrow for my birthday.
Wow. Happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. But things are really good here. I think that, I'm hopeful not to be too political, but I'm hopeful that with this change in administration that we'll be looking to see some really crucial changes in terms of green infrastructure, green energy, more favorable family policies and healthcare policies. And that would make it more inviting. But for right now, I think I've got things pretty good. So I'll stick around while I can.
Well, I'm glad to hear that things are good. How did the wildfires impact your job, and how did conservationists respond?
Well, interestingly enough, the fires didn't actually get us up here. So that was really good. We, here in Townsville, where I'm based, we basically have we have a regular burning program, so that's not too much of an issue. And we do have fires, but not nearly as bad as the Sydney bushfires or the Perth bushfires. Our big issue that we had last year was catastrophic flooding, which you may have seen on the news. So we had a monsoon event that basically gave us, 4 yards of water in a week. It was insane. But yeah, things are mostly recovered now. I'm in the dry tropics, so this is mostly grazing country, and the city that I live in is relatively small. But yeah, the cool thing about Australia is that the ecosystem is so old that it sort of takes a lot to knock it down. So for those bushfires, they wiped out a really big percentage of Sydney natural heritage area. But up here, things are just hardy. They're designed to survive. Like, they've been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and things haven't changed very much. But sorry, that's going on.
Oh, no, that's all right. I'm glad to hear that you weren't affected by the wildfires, and thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, no worries. I am going to have to duck off back to work, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for reaching out for everyone. Like, this is really excellent. Like, I didn't think that when, like, sometimes you forget who comes before you and who comes after you, and time changes. And I just think, great job, everyone. Keep up the good work. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you.
All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Okay, next up we have Shelby Calm. She was the Sustainability Fellow in 2014-2015. She currently works with Fair Farms as a campaign manager, and her favorite SMCM spot was the beehives on the farm. That's one of my favorite spots too, because I am currently the head beekeeper.
That's awesome. I'm so happy that they're still going strong.
Yeah, we've had lots of struggles, but I got one hive that's still kicking.
Yay! That makes my heart warm.
So Shelby, what led you to work at Fair Farms? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So just some background about Fair Farms. We are a campaign that is housed under Waterkeepers Chesapeake. So Waterkeepers Chesapeake, also sorry, my landlord is moving furniture upstairs, so if it's a little loud, that's what's happening. But Waterkeepers Chesapeake is an organization that convenes different river keepers in the Chesapeake region, and they work on litigation against large-scale industrial polluters, trying to protect water quality in the bay. And the Fair Farms campaign is specifically focused on, initially was focused on the connection between our food system and water quality, but since its inception, it's kind of morphed into a more general food system reform campaign. And kind of what got me interested in that, a few different things. When I was at St. Mary's, I worked at Even Star Farm, and I was a public policy major and was kind of interested in environmental policy, but that job really changed things for me. And then I briefly worked at the Southern Maryland Agricultural Development Commission, and then was doing some work at the farm, with the hives and everything. So yeah, I just became more and more interested in the intersection of policy, environmental work, environmental justice, and food systems, and kind of how all of those things were pieced together. Yeah, and that was what brought me to Fair Farms.
That's so cool. So then our next question for you is, what are some of the challenges you've faced while working there, and then what are some things that you really love about Fair Farms?
Yeah, let's see. I guess some challenges. So I started at Fair Farms maybe like a few months after the campaign had launched. So while that was really exciting and I was able to really shape how the campaign has grown, it's really challenging. It's challenging too because we were working in a space that like hadn't yet been occupied. So a lot of what we do is public education and statewide policy supporting lots of different issues, food access, generally like, you know, how we can support small to mid-sized sustainable diversified farming operations. And there wasn't really a unified voice for those smaller diversified operations in Maryland policy and legislation. So I think that was kind of, you know, it's challenging to start that, and we had to focus a lot on relationship building and just kind of doing a landscape evaluation of who's working in the space, who can we work with. Yeah, so that's, and then the second part of the question, what do I like? I guess to the other end of that, one of my favorite parts about the job is relationship building, and specifically relationship building with farmers. We've a few years ago developed a farmer advisory council that is made up of farmers throughout Maryland that kind of help to guide the work, both programming and legislative work of Fair Farms, to make sure that, you know, what we're working on is bubbling up from the farmers and, you know, aligned with the interests of the people that we're trying to support and really led by them. So that's my favorite part, talking with my farmer friends.
So you touched on some of this, but what are some issues that you're most passionate about, and how are you contributing to their solutions, like whether that's through your job or outside of it?
Mm-hmm. I'm really interested. I liked what Zoe brought up, that, you know, we shouldn't just think about sustainability in a silo, and I guess thinking specifically about my work, I'm more and more interested in the work that kind of sits at the crux between food access and farmer support. So I think, you know, when you're talking about food and healthy eating and, you know, buying locally grown food, a lot of time, we can't talk about that without talking about price and talking about income and income restrictions and zip code and kind of all sorts of other factors that affects folks' ability to access, you know, healthy, locally grown, sustainably grown food. So something that I've liked working on is policy that kind of hits at both of those things. Something we're working on this session is a food donation tax credit that gives farmers a tax credit for donating to certified food banks and food pantries. So it's kind of valuing the contribution that the farmers are making, and also, you know, increasing access for these local of this locally grown produce. Also, sorry, I have a mint in my mouth. There was like a frog in my throat, and I'm realizing it's like, it can sometimes be rude when you're like talking to someone and they're like have a mint or gum or something. Just there. But yeah, that's something that I've been really interested in, and hope that we can kind of find more and more legislative opportunities like that, and craft more legislative opportunities that really hit at those two things.
Excellent. And then kind of bringing things together, do you think that the St. Mary's Office of Sustainability or the Cape Chandler Campus Farm, do you think they can help support the Fair Farms mission in any way?
Sure. I mean, like, I think the first thing, if folks are interested in getting involved, is just signing up for our newsletter. Our website is fairfarms.org or fairfarmsnow.org, either will work. But yeah, sign up for a newsletter, follow what we're doing. It's really bonkers to see how like big of an impact you can have on both local and state level policy. I think there are a lot of people that maybe feel a little defeatist when they think about advocacy and getting involved in the political process, but there have been instances where legislators have been swayed by one or two really vocal voices telling them to support XYZ bill. So I kind of can't emphasize that enough, that your voice really can matter in that process. So yeah, we have action alerts and ways that you can kind of follow up on the legislative priorities that we're supporting this year. And then, yeah, if anyone, we have a blog, and there have been times where St. Mary's students have kind of written blog pieces for us, either about what's happening at St. Mary's or what's happening in their hometown, or kind of whatever topic you're interested in focusing on. So if anyone's interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. Always happy to work with St. Mary's students.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking with us. I definitely hope we can come back and talk about the bees later on.
Oh yeah, I could go on about the bees for a while. And yeah, thanks again for pulling this together.
Of course. All right.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun hearing what everybody's up to now. It's really cool and like super inspiring, especially because like, I don't know, a couple years when someone's organizing this call, like it'll be me and they're gonna ask me these same questions, and that's kind of cool to think about. Shelby, I'm just curious, are you all pushing anything in the General Assembly right now?
Yes, a few different bills. One of them is, I can actually share a link in the chat if I'm allowed to do that. One of them is extending the tax credit for farmers donating to food banks. We're also working to establish an urban agriculture grant program. Another that would divert funds or fund the Maryland Healthy Soils program to help farmers implement practices that build soil health. A few different things, but I can share that in the chat if folks are interested in learning more.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited. Cool. Well, okay, let's introduce Shane Hall, who was the fellow in 2009 and 2010. And he is now a professor in the Salisbury University Environmental Studies Department, teaching some really cool classes. So I'm excited to hear more about those. And his favorite SMCM spot is anywhere you can kayak to, which is a really good answer. And so, yeah, you mentioned that you've done a lot of traveling and learning. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about where you were, but also about how your travels influenced your outlook on the environment and sustainability.
Sure. Thank you all so much for putting this together. It's been really inspiring. So I want to just like echo what you were just saying there, Maddie, but also it's just so amazing to see. I haven't seen Zoe and Mare and Lisa in particular forever, and it's just like breaking my heart to see you all right now. So, and all the rest of y'all too, but them, like we work together on so many things. But yeah, travel stuff. I think I wrote a lot about the travel stuff in the email because like describing 6 years of grad school, which is just pretty much reading books and writing papers a lot of the time, like is pretty boring. So those travel moments really stand out as more narrative. But I've been very lucky throughout my time at St. Mary's and then in grad school to have access to a lot of funding through different academic programs, and in the case of going to northern Pakistan, the State Department, to be able to travel on somebody else's dime and to learn and to experience different communities and environmental and social issues that way. And so in graduate school, when I was doing environmental studies, PhD out of University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon, I was able to go to central sort of China and mostly Hunan province, but also Beijing for about a month and a half, and then also northern Pakistan a couple years ago with the State Department to do some teacher development work at an older university that got a lot of new professors. And it was really cool because the professors there were all like my age, like they were all like mid-20s. And sort of revamping rural education and higher education and the liberal arts So I was involved in a group that did like teacher development stuff at the university. So and my whole team, like somebody had just adopted a child, another person like just had a child like sick. And so nobody wanted to go. And they're like, you know, you can go to Pakistan if you want. I'm like, yes, hell yeah, why not?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those are the moments, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good experience to travel. And I think something that's honestly really interesting too is like a lot of you all have traveled or got to be, you know, and in another place and experience all these other places. And I mean, for the exception of JJ, everybody's at least like back on the East Coast if they're not in Maryland, which I think is pretty kind of cool, you know. Yeah, what were like, that's so interesting. I feel like not many people get to experience that kind of like that kind of actual immersion into these communities in China and Pakistan. Did you face any challenges there? Like, I'm curious to hear what life was like.
I mean, I think that, you know, like so many folks on this call, like who have had study abroad or travel or living abroad experiences, like there are all sorts of like just everything becomes new and interesting. It's sort of like going back to being a child in a lot of senses where you're just like, how does this work? How does this work? How do I do that? The thing that stands out like the most like photogenic sort of memory of the issues in Pakistan though is that really the like more than anywhere else I've traveled in the world, like the geopolitics of America's influence in Pakistan have been so devastating and just unmitigatingly horrific and abusive that like people just would be very straightforward of like, I hate you and your country, just period. Like there were very, very friendly people, but other people would just have to come up and say like, I just need to tell you, you've ruined our nation and my life, or my uncle was killed or something. And it was this very, and at times dangerous sort of like abrupt, like clash that I've never experienced in anywhere else, where you might have like different levels of economic privilege or other kinds of privilege, but not sort of an adjacent to U.S. war interventions in like Afghanistan and the rural border up towards the north. So that was very different. And so there were, you know, machine guns and bomb checks and all those kinds of things. That was, you know, that's a different thing. But I didn't do any of that. So like, I didn't have to check for the bombs or carry the gun. So it wasn't really hard. But it was jarring.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's awesome though that you got to be there and experience that. And also, you know, like we know these things happen and we can kind of understand what it's, I don't know, just the general climate and how much people hate us, but no one tells us to our face, you know. We don't have to represent American politics in other countries that often. That's really interesting. And I'm sure that kind of, you know, has played into the courses that you teach at Salisbury right now. And maybe your classes that you listed when you were just chatting with us earlier, they seemed really interesting, but do you have a favorite class that you teach? I'm sure I don't know, it's hard to choose one.
I think I'm going to echo Lisa from earlier when she said that like the thing about being in communications is, which is like the fellows, you get to do something new every day. The thing that's great about being a professor is that you get to do something new all the time and you can switch it up by changing your courses. And so you get to have the conversations you want to have essentially. And so I love teaching. I teach environmental justice every fall. I teach a course on race, place, and nature every spring. Those are my upper level courses. Those are the courses I care about in my research the most and my teaching the most. But then I also teach the intro to communicating climate change and intro to environmental humanities. And those are a ton of fun and also allow you to talk about environmental justice and race and nature, but like at the sort of inviting people in level as opposed to like, this will become your life for the next 16 weeks kind of balance. So.
Yeah. And I have written here, do you have any book recommendations for us? But maybe just put them in the chat because I'm not going to remember, but I'm curious because
I'll hold up one. I came prepared because you told
yes.
Me. So this one, I'll put these in the chat, but
Please.
This one I feel like is really like been life affirming to me the last few months. This is A Field Guide to Climate Anxiety by Sarah Jaquette Ray, who's actually came out of the same grad program as me, and she's at Humboldt State. It's just a wonderful dive into the emotions and mental health around climate change and how to engage with that in your role in activism, if you're an activist, or sort of recognizing when to step back and have that fulfillment. So I really like that. And I'm teaching that this semester alongside Jamie Margolin's Youth to Power, which is also great. And hits a lot of the same notes. So those two together have been like giving me life and joy.
I love that. Maybe this is inspiring me to maybe we'll start a book club and pick one of those books and students can be in it. That's a good idea. So thank you. I haven't read either of those, so that sounds pretty good. Yeah, so I mean, you're back in Salisbury, you've done a lot of things. Did you always want to be a professor? Like what inspired you? How did you get to that?
I just sort of stumbled into it, I think. I didn't really know. It was Kate Chandler. That's the true answer. Kate Chandler pushed me to go back to school and gave me like all the help on every step of applications. And I had no idea, but she and Bill Will and Kate Norlock before she left, like it was my SMCM professors who were like, you should just go read books somewhere for a while. And they were right. And Kate Chandler did make the world like a better place in everything she touched and did. And I miss her so much. So yeah.
Yeah, we should dedicate our meeting to her, and we should all cheers her later after this meeting when I'm keeping you for so long without eating dinner. We're all gonna have a beer and cheers her. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shane. I'm looking forward to these books. Thanks for chatting with us.
Up next, we have Meredith Epstein, who was the fellow from 2008 to 2009. She is currently a professor at UMD Institute of Applied Agriculture, and she also teaches a class at SMCM Fork to Farm that Lindsay and I got to take last semester. It was fantastic. It was very hands-on. And Meredith's favorite SMCM spot is Daffodil Gulch. Thanks for coming today, Meredith. Can I have the next slide, please? Awesome. So what first got you started in gardening, and how does gardening connect you to sustainability?
Well, I mean, my dad always had a little vegetable garden in our backyard, and my mom worked in what we call the green industry when I was a kid. She worked for a company that went to office buildings to take care of all of their houseplants. So I was just always surrounded by plants. But things really took off for me when I was at St. Mary's. I'm gonna thank Zoe for this, but I was just looking for like a green job while I was so invested in sustainability work. And she told me that they had some positions open at Even Star Farm, and I got a job there, and then you'll hear about the rest of what happened after that. But how does it connect to sustainability? I guess I'll blow that up a little bit to agriculture, which is the field that I am so heavily invested in now. And I would say that I really started by looking at the environmental aspects and impacts of agriculture and the industry, but along my path really widened that perspective to this three-legged stool everyone is referring to over and over again of the social and environmental aspects and impacts. It's wrapped up in all of that, so yeah.
Very true. You spent some time in Boston while getting your graduate degree. Did you always want to return to Maryland?
I did, but I did want to widen my experiences a bit. So after St. Mary's and I stayed on for that extra year as the fellow and also continued working at the farm. I actually went to California first, and well, okay, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I needed to learn more about agriculture if I wanted to go into that field, but I wasn't sure what type of learning was the next best thing. And I applied to several different types of programs. I applied to grad school all across the country. And I also applied to a certificate program. It was an apprenticeship, an on-farm apprenticeship at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And it was a program where you lived immersively with 50 other apprentices in tents on the farm for 6 months. And you worked together, you took classes together, you ate together, you did all the chores together. And I got into both grad school and that. And I ended up deferring grad school a year to do that, that really hands-on apprenticeship experience, which was a very like practical applied training in farm production. And I think that while graduate school was great after that in Boston, I think that certificate program was actually the most valuable experience I could have found. I wanted to find that at St. Mary's, but you know, there, being a liberal arts college, it really didn't have the science and practical training in agriculture that it's starting to now. So yeah, California to Boston, and I knew as soon as I graduated from my master's program that I wanted to be back in Maryland, and that was largely because of family. And also my friend group from St. Mary's. Like, I know so many of us are so fortunate to have super intimately tight friend groups that come out of our St. Mary's experience. And mine has been close to my heart from then. And I wanted to be back where most of them were. And people come and go with their life experiences, but it's kind of our home base, mostly being Marylanders. So yeah, it brought me back.
Fantastic. You sort of already answered what made you want to work in sustainable agriculture. So I guess I'll ask, what realm of sustainable agriculture do you find most interesting?
Sure. I think that, like I mentioned before, I really started with an environmentally focused outlook, and that grew out of being, well, it actually wasn't a major at the time, but an environmental studies major at St. Mary's. It was a student design major at that time. And being really involved in SEEK and the climate movement. But my experiences in Santa Cruz really opened my eyes to more of the social justice work involved in agriculture. And then in grad school, a lot of the really important economic work, a lot of my degree was focused on economics. And that made me really, really passionate about the future of agriculture, and specifically who the farmers would be and their practices and how supported they would be. And so I got really into working with beginning farmers and doing beginning farmer education. So that's where I am now, and try to make that a really well-rounded experience for them environmentally, socially, and economically.
I just have to thank you for letting me know about the Young Farmers and Cooks Conference that was at the end of last year. That was one of the most just eye-opening, enlightening things that I could have ever attended, and I really appreciate you and Guy for putting me onto that. Now that you're back at St. Mary's, how does it feel to be back on the farm?
Yeah, it's so exciting. So I am working as an adjunct in the environmental studies department at St. Mary's since last semester, just teaching one course, although it looks like this summer I'll get to teach that course and an externship on the farm. So any of you freshmen or sophomores that might want to enroll, I highly encourage that. So I think, you know, Zoe mentioned this, that the farm was really in its ideation phase when we were fellows. It was a community garden behind DPC, and I'm this all is making me feel kind of old. Like, Zoe and I are going to turn 35 this year. So when we were fellows, I'm pretty sure that we just wrote basically the concept paper for the farm. And Zoe, please jump in if you remember anything differently. But it was really just the first suggestion that St. Mary's should have a farm. should have more than a community garden. And it was really the work of Shane and Lisa and all of you that came after us that turned it into what it is today. And it's a real thrill to come back and see it how it is today. So yeah, I guess I see there are some other related questions. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask every single one because you sort of answered some of them. But when you graduated, how did you expect the campus farm to be operating now?
So I'll be honest, I was really hopeful that by now there would be a full-time salaried farm manager, perhaps an assistant manager, and several paid student positions to make it sustainable. And where we are right now is kind of keeping it in a holding pattern at the moment during the pandemic, and trying to find sustainable sources of funding to hire such lines. But when there's a state hiring freeze and things like that, it's just not really the right time to do more than plan. But I'm really, really, really pushing for that, and would love any support that anyone else here can give to those efforts. So let me know if you want in.
Well, Lindsay, Maddie, and I have definitely been trying to get whatever we can done. There's not a lot of it is just like applying for grants and like hoping that someone can bless us with some money, or that we can be told that we can like build a new fence. But we are still sort of in that just like holding place, just waiting for something good to happen. You sort of already answered what the farm was like back in the day, in that it was kind of just, it was very like, and other people have said this as well, that it was like very student led. What do you think should happen to get more people involved on the farm?
I think a lot of those things are happening. The teaching of the course, starting to design more funded internship positions, starting the externship, things like that. I'd love to see alumni gather around this in a more concerted way to do fundraising and perhaps create an endowment for the farm, something that can be more self-sustaining than just going for grants all the time, which is a lot of work. And so I'm really excited to do that. And I do want to say, a huge part of that motivation is the student experience, but a huge part of that motivation is to honor the work that Kate did and to keep that moving forward. She clearly touched the lives of like literally everyone here, whether you know it or not, and was just an amazing professor who, led Shane and me into education and teaching, and kept that farm alive by like literally driving empty milk cartons back and forth from her house filled with water before there was water. And we really want to honor that and have it grow into what we know that she wanted.
Fantastic. I hope we can continue to honor her legacy. My last question for you is a little self-centered because I want to start my own farm, but what one piece of essential advice would you give to a student hoping to start their own farm?
Can I give 2 pieces of advice? First, work on as many farms as you can before you start your own. It was, kind of going off of something Shane said, learning on other people's dime, getting to make mistakes on other people's dime, getting to, learn how to use equipment and experiment with equipment, which is, huge capital investment. And, just seeing how different people operate their systems in the spaces that they have. So whether it's interning or doing an apprenticeship, make sure you're getting paid legally when you're doing those things. And second, take business courses. It's really easy to fall in love with the plants and the soil and being outside and all of that, but farming is a business and it only works if your business is profitable. So finance classes and personnel management classes and things like that, that they're not sexy, but they are so important. And it's the only way that things will actually work so that you can enjoy the plants in the soil.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Cyrus. Not gonna be able to say this correctly. Is it Chimento?
It's Chimento, but that's okay.
Chimento, sorry. He was the fellow from 2015 to 2016, and is currently working with the Anacostia Watershed Society and doing GIS work with the National Center for Smart Growth. And his favorite SMCM spots are the greens and the waterfront. Very nice. All right, so first up we have, is there an environmental issue that you are most interested in right now or have done the most work on?
Yeah, sure. Before I get into that, I think it'll make more sense if I issue one little correction, and that is that I don't work for the Anacostia Watershed Society. I work for the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, but that's all right. So I'm super interested in transportation, urbanism, and planning. I think this is like often not really seen as an environmental issue or seen kind of in a very one-dimensional way as a environmental issue. But that's what I've been doing for the past 4 years, and I think given that the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions in this country come from the transportation sector, I think it's like a really, really important thing to intervene on. And because transportation and land use are just so interconnected, I think you can't kind of take one without the other. Our built environment is the canvas on which we live all of our lives. And it's super important to think about how that is done and how it is making things better or worse for people and better or worse for our planet. So that is the one that is close to my heart.
Couldn't agree more. Right, our second question for you is, could you talk a little bit about how your internships have helped you prepare for your current position, or how they have helped you to focus on a specific career path?
Yeah. I was thinking a little bit about this, and when I was in undergrad and immediately out of school, I kind of thought that I wanted to be doing the kinds of stuff that you heard JJ talking about earlier. I was, biology, ecology undergrad, and super interested in natural resource management, that kind of thing. And I did a bunch of internships, one of which was at the Anacostia Watershed Society, National Park Service, that kind of thing, and realized that I didn't like it. So I think one of the things that my internships prepared me to do, or rather helped me do, is rule some things out. And I think, kind of echoing Meredith, working at a lot of different internships or doing as many little bets as you can kind of helps you get exposure to the way that different places do things, and kind of helps you build a sense of like even very basic things like what is a good work environment, and what is like what does it look like for an employer to be treating you well, what does it look like for an employer to be treating you badly, because especially coming out of school, it's like hard to calibrate to that kind of thing sometimes. So I think that that was one. And then also like I think I first started learning GIS in an internship, and that is what I ended up doing my master's in. So kind of getting you exposure to a lot of different skills and things you may not have seen in school, that kind of thing.
Excellent. So what did make you decide to pursue your master's degree, and what did you get your master's in?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been working for the Bike and Transportation Advocacy Group for nearly 4 years. And for like the first 2 of those, I was just doing something that I wasn't making me happy on a day-to-day basis. But I knew that I was really interested in transportation and planning, and I wanted to do something in that field that just kind of fit a little better with my personality and what kinds of things I like to work on day to day. So that is kind of what pushed me towards going back to school to kind of like re-credential myself, or like just be able to make a change. And so I ended up deciding to go back for a degree in geospatial information science, which isn't a familiar term to a lot of people, but maybe more so to this audience. But it's basically the field of making maps and using spatial information to answer questions. And so, yeah, because transportation and land use is kind of inherently spatial, I thought that would be kind of like a good niche to fill. And it's a field that has a lot of elements of both kind of like science and kind of a lot of the thing, like it's very heavily used in environmental science, but there's also kind of an art to it. Making maps is communication. A lot of folks before me have talked about communication, and so yeah, you kind of get to, if you're making maps, you get to kind of have the design eye and skill set as well. So I think it kind of just hit a lot of interests for me and got me out of being unhappy in my day-to-day work life. So
that is always important.
Yeah.
The last question, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, it's hard to look that far ahead, but I think like one kind of triple bottom line intervention that I see a lot of value in is making like transit systems, in particular bus systems in cities, a lot better. Like they more efficient, work better for the people that use them, all kinds of stuff. And it's like not a very sexy solution. It's not Tesla. It's not electric autonomous vehicles, but it's the thing that's going to make a difference both in people's lives and also for the climate. And so I think in an ideal world, if I were, in 5 years working on kind of using my skills to help redesign and better bus systems. I know that sounds kind of silly, but that's my dream.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I remember in my poli-sci class, we learned about the DC metro system and just how awful it is in so many ways, like for, social issues and also for the environment. So I hope you achieve those things. Thank you.
Next up, Thomas Brewer, I think you are the interim sustainability fellow. I don't have the year here. But right now he's my boss and the manager of environmental health and safety programs at SMCM. And he never told me what his favorite spot was, so I just guessed that it was the door. Hey, Thomas.
You know what? I worked for 5 years at the Green Door, so that guess is extremely well placed.
Yes. Okay. Good. I hope you wouldn't be insulted. I don't see why you would be, but okay, our first question. I actually didn't really even know that you ran for state senate. I saw like a sign once, but I assumed like it was, isn't your dad also named Thomas Brewer?
He is. We are a very unoriginal family.
I just thought that it was your dad. I didn't realize it was you. Why did you run for state senate? Tell us about that.
So my background is extremely, I guess, unordinary. I became a pharmacist after college at St. Mary's. And then I didn't like it. I didn't find satisfaction. I wanted something more. And after I stepped out of pharmacy, I was asked to help out teaching organic chemistry classes at St. Mary's, which I did very happily. And after 2 semesters, somebody else at the college asked me to help out with the, well, there was not an Office of Sustainability at the time, but they asked me to help that position, and I gladly picked up that torch. Somebody got another job and left in the middle of the year, so I helped out with the spring of, I think, 2013. And that really gave me a sense of fulfillment. It was something, I guess, that I was looking for that I wasn't getting as a pharmacist. And so I started to try to identify other ways that I could help out in my local community. So I became the president of the county's Commission on the Environment for St. Mary's County, which I still maintain that. And I think that's what ultimately led me to run for office. Following the 2016 election, I don't think it'll be a big surprise for anybody here to say that certainly motivated me to want to have a larger impact. So I think that's ultimately what made me run for state senate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you think you'll run again?
I certainly can see myself running again from a strategic standpoint.
I'd vote for you.
Right, then.
Come on.
Yeah, no. Well, one of the reasons that I ran in 2018, not a secret, I originally wanted to run for the delegate position in 29B. And when I met our present delegate now, Brian Crosby, he had already filed, and it was early in the campaign, and I met him and talked to him, and I didn't want to run against him. I very much wanted to support him, and he's the one that told me that nobody was running on the Democratic ticket for state senate position. And I thought that was absurd, and that was the main reason that I ran for that position.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like really, like running a campaign and doing all of that. Like, what kinds of things did you learn? Are you able to incorporate any of what you learned into like your job at St. Mary's now? Or just, I guess you're still on the commission and all these things and like still have these connections, I guess, but like,
I'd say the biggest thing that I gathered was that there are so many moving parts that it is important to respect and understand that there are so many people working to make sure that the machine is stable. And I grew up in St. Mary's County. My parents graduated from St. Mary's College in the late 70s, early 80s. So I grew up in Southern Maryland, and I was still so impressed by all that I learned when campaigning to understand what goes into running county and state government. So it is surely humbling, I would say, to try. I mean, my goal when I was running for office was to try to understand everything. I've always been a proud both nerd and geek, and I was humbled by all that I learned to try to understand local and state government. And so that it made me very happy to continue to learn from that experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. I feel like you're like St. Mary's would be so proud to have such a well-rounded liberal arts involved alumni. I don't know. I feel like you've just done a lot of different, like, I mean, related, but like seemingly unrelated things.
They hired me after I lost the election, so I'm very happy with St. Mary's College.
Yeah, the next question is kind of a weird question, so I'm going to kind of tie it into the fourth question. But like, do you want to be at St. Mary's for like? Do you like it? Be like at St. Mary's? What do you see yourself doing?
I mean, so for some background, my position is manager of environmental health, safety, and sustainability programs, which it kind of combines two different jobs. So
yeah,
environmental health and safety is basically like your OSHA regulations, making sure that the campus is abiding by all of the rules that are set up to make sure that everybody's safe. But I was the first one where they tied sustainability in. So they made me the manager of the Office of Sustainability on top of the other job, which had never been done before. And the person that had the job before me of environmental health and safety, Brad Newkirk, is now the director of the physical plant at the college. So he pretty much maintains most of everything that goes on. And some of my good friends from college still work at the college. And so I think I would very much enjoy to continue working there. It seems like, I mean, my dad retired after 30 plus years in April. And it seems like an institution I'd like to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'll stick around.
Good. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely helpful to have like someone helping me too. It's like this job, we've all had it. It's kind of like hard to know where to go and what direction, and being able to have an extra person there who's been there, I think will continue, like it'll get even better the longer you're there. So yeah, the next question is also like, it's like the kind of question we would have just in an office meeting, like what can we do to make our office better? But I guess, I don't know, what do you think we can do to make the impact of sustainability like better on our campus?
I think that folks like yourself, Meredith, is a big part of that. We had a meeting that unfortunately I missed this morning, but
I missed it too.
Looking towards increasing the internships dedicated towards having students help out the sustainability office. A lot of colleges, their office of sustainability is like a dozen employees. And we have myself and a fellow, you, Maddie, and then interns, Atlas, Lindsay, a couple other people that really run all of the Office of Sustainability. So if we can garner some support to increase the efforts that go towards sustainability, then our efforts are not wasted. I think that it's very important for people to understand and learn that negative externalities are not calculated into daily life.
Yeah.
That which we waste and causes harm to other individuals is not a part of the daily calculation. We waste and we don't consider how that harms others. So any effort towards increasing the educational awareness and general awareness towards sustainability efforts is a good cause that I'm always going to stand behind.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you have this job and I'm glad you'll be here for a while. I think you're a great person for the role, obviously. And I think the office can go in a really good direction. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future. And the future being right now, it's time for Ivan. I'm so sorry. This is really, I didn't think this was going to go so long. We had like so many more like things and questions and everything. I'm so sorry, Ivan, that you had to wait through all of this, but let's go ahead and introduce you.
Yep, so up next we have Ivan Hernandez, who was the Sustainability Fellow from 2017 to 2018, and he is currently working with the Government Accountability Office, and his favorite event is Hologreens. If I remember correctly, Ivan, you're also part of the D'Souza Brent Scholars Program?
Yep, I'm a proud DB alum.
Awesome, same here, good to see you. Next slide. So our first question, what led you to pursue grad school?
Yeah, so for background information, I completed my master's program in environmental sciences and policy at Johns Hopkins University, and I finished the program last May. I always knew since I was in high school that I wanted to pursue higher education. I'm a first generation college student. My parents are immigrants from El Salvador. They came to the United States in the 1980s seeking refuge from the Salvadoran Civil War. And education was the one thing that my parents always valued because it wasn't something that they had the luxury of obtaining. So I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school and try my best to achieve the highest level of education possible. But I also knew that by my junior year of college at St. Mary's, I was burnt out and I knew that I wasn't in a position to enter graduate school directly after undergrad as I anticipated as a high school senior. It just didn't work out that way. So the Sustainability Fellowship was extremely appealing to me because it was 1 year. So after that 1 year was over, I could pursue graduate school if that was what I wanted. And fortunately for me, that's how it happened. So I knew that I wanted to continue studying the environment because it was an issue that was important to me. At St. Mary's, I double majored in biology and environmental studies. So I had a very strong science background that I was satisfied with. I feel that the biology program at St. Mary's is extremely rigorous and provided me with a skill set that ultimately has helped me in every single position I've had, even the non-scientific ones, since I graduated. So I really wanted to expand my technical knowledge and skills to include the policy side of things. As I was matriculating through undergrad, I sort of realized that we have so much scientific data available, robust scientific data available, and oftentimes those data are not translated into policy for various reasons. And I really wanted to focus at that issue, the intersection of science and policy. That's something that really interested me and is the epitome, I think, of someone who goes to a liberal arts institution wanting to study science and then comes up with this new perspective. Well, science is just one part of it. And there's this other part that I think I may be more interested in. So that's what led me to the program at Johns Hopkins in environmental sciences and policy. I thought that it was the perfect fit for me and I 100% recommend the program. The classes there are extremely well developed, and I think that it definitely fed my interest of pursuing the policy side of things, but also still allowing me to take science classes, which is what I was familiar with.
Awesome. You mentioned doing a lot of different internships. As someone who's done these different positions, what is some advice that you would give students seeking internships?
Yeah, this is a great question. Thanks for asking. So I want to make clear that while I was an undergrad at St. Mary's, I didn't have a single internship during the summers. And that's something that I would advise to not do. Try your best to get an internship, but honestly, the feasibility of getting an internship may not be realistic for everyone. But try your best to get one for sure. But if you don't end up landing one, it's okay because you can still do great things. I didn't have an internship when I was an undergrad. I actually spent my summers working at Six Flags America. I started working at Six Flags in the retail department my senior year of high school. And I just kept coming back every summer because I kept getting promoted into different positions. And having some leadership experience wasn't a bad thing. And I think that definitely helped me. So there's that. But while I was in graduate school, I was able to land 2 positions with the federal government. The first was with the Bureau of Land Management, which is a federal agency under the Department of the Interior that oversees our federal lands, so our public lands and our subsurface minerals. And then I also did an internship with the Government Accountability Office, which is where I am working now. So I'm an example of someone who did an internship and was offered a conversion to a full-time position. So that's why internships are incredibly valuable because it can lead to full-time employment, as you will see in my case. And the Government Accountability Office is a nonpartisan independent agency of the legislative branch. So we essentially serve the Congress. The Congress is our client, and we help the Congress meet its constitutional duties of providing government oversight by doing a lot of cool work that I can get into, I guess, in question number 3.
Yeah, go right into it, please.
Yeah, so for the federal government was always something that I had on my radar. Again, I'm a first generation American. I take the role of being a citizen very seriously. And I knew that I wanted to be able to give back to my country, the country that gave so much to me, my family, in any way that I could. And I thought that working for the being in the federal service was my way of doing that. And I'm so happy with that decision. I actually just started in my position 3 weeks ago. So I took the oath of office that every federal employee takes to defend the Constitution from enemies, both foreign and domestic. And that was really significant for me. My dad was right next to me, immigrants from El Salvador. And I'm here affirming my loyalty to the country that provided us safety and these opportunities. So challenges working with the federal, that I faced working with the government. So picking the agency that you want to pursue is incredibly important. So the GAO, as I mentioned, is nonpartisan and it's an independent agency, which are 2 key things when deciding what federal government you want to what federal agency you want to work for. So as someone who studied the environment, typically you lean towards EPA and NOAA. Those are 2 typical federal agencies that most people are familiar with. They have really good name recognition because they're important. And I actually contracted with EPA for 3 months prior to starting this position, and I did some work in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. The Chesapeake Bay program has phenomenal work going on right now and increasing diversity and inclusion in the environmental field, which is so, so, so important. I actually was sad to leave that position, but as others have said here, sometimes you are presented with opportunities and decisions that you have to make, that you're gonna have to make in terms of what's best for you and your career and your personal life. And even though I loved that position because it was doing things that I was passionate about, I knew that the GAO was ultimately the position that was best suited for me because it is a lifelong position. It's permanent, job security is there, and I had all the benefits. So many people, especially during this transition of administrations, wonder how that may impact my day-to-day work. So because the GAO is nonpartisan, so we are fact-based, we go strictly to the facts and nothing else. Our analysis are devoid of any political influence, and that is something that the GAO takes very, very seriously. So we have this reputation of being the congressional watchdog, and we follow the facts. So regardless if the administration is Republican or Democrat, our work remains the same, and we continue with our way of obtaining the facts in the exact same way. So the transition of administration doesn't really play a role in my work, but it definitely could play a role in other agencies. And that's the difference between working for an independent agency who's nonpartisan, and working for perhaps like an executive agency. For example, when I was interning at the Bureau of Land Management, that was during the Trump administration. And I'm not sure if you guys followed some of the policies and executive orders that were issued under the Trump administration, but one of them had to do with how agencies analyze greenhouse gases in relation to climate change. So there was a memo, an executive order that was issued under the Trump administration that basically consolidated greenhouse gas analysis to basically nothing. And the memo from the Obama administration went from like a page and a half of directive and guidance that included the word climate change to the Trump administration executive order, which was a paragraph that didn't even mention the word climate change. So that impacts the work at the BLM in that way, but it doesn't impact me because I'm an independent, I work for an independent agency.
Fantastic. First, congrats on your new job. And
Thanks.
I guess this is the perfect time to ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, so I definitely see myself with the GAO. Long term, people who work for the GAO spend their careers here, 30 years. The GAO is headed by the Comptroller General. So the current Comptroller General, his name is Gene, and he worked at the GAO for 30 years before being appointed to his current position, which is a 15-year term position. I don't know if I'll make my way all the way to Comptroller General, but within the next 5 years, I certainly wish to be promoted to senior analyst on the road to becoming an assistant director on the natural resources and environment team. So I failed to mention this earlier, but the GAO has 14 different mission teams that focus on a variety of different public policy issues. And during my internship at the GAO, during my last semester of grad school, I was placed on the natural resources and environment team, the NRE. For obvious reasons, and I was placed on a job where we looked at and audited the federal government's response to enhance our roads and bridges to the impacts of climate change. And they even allowed me to fly out with them to Arizona to conduct a site visit as an intern. It was such a great experience, and they paid very well for an internship. So all the green flags were there for the GAO. So that's how I knew that I really wanted to pursue the GAO full time. And like most government internships, if you perform at the level that they want you to perform and you receive favorable marks, you are extended what's called a direct hire authority status, which basically just means that you can apply for jobs that you qualify for at a non-competitive basis. So that gives you a leg up. The GAO's program is a little bit more streamlined in that you don't really have to do any additional applications or interviews. Once you get that status after your interview or after your internship, and a position becomes available, that has to happen. There has to be vacancy. Then they can just automatically convert you. And so that ended up happening to me, although it took a couple of months for that to happen. And that's one thing you should be aware of, that it doesn't necessarily happen very fast. With any government entity, there's always the bureaucratic processes, the unnecessary bureaucratic processes that just slow things down. So that's something to be aware of as well.
Good to know. Circling back to your experience as the Sustainability Fellow, did you find that your job was restrictive, or did you have room and resources to complete project goals?
No, the Sustainability Fellowship is the exact opposite of restrictive. It's literally what you decide to make of it, which allows the person who is the fellow the opportunity to explore so many different career development opportunities for themselves, which I thought was extremely beneficial. I personally think that the Sustainability Fellowship is so perfect and that it helps develop professional skill set that you're really going to need, and it can be applied to so many different fields of lines of work. Something that I tell students all the time, like as a District of Brent Scholar, I have come back to give talks to current students. And one thing that I tell students all the time is to realize that, yes, you are majoring in something where you're focusing on a specific discipline during your time at St. Mary's, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be committed to just that post-graduation. So in addition to building your technical knowledge within the discipline that you choose, St. Mary's also has that core curriculum that enables you to prepare and build skills such as critical thinking skills, analytical skills, public speaking skills, writing skills. All those are essential and can be applied to a variety of different positions. So I like to tell people not to think of it oh, if I don't get a job that has to do with my major, then, you know, I feel some type of way about it. Because ultimately, as long as you're still applying the skills that you developed during your time at St. Mary's to the job that you are in, that still is useful. And I think that you should view it that way. I don't think that had anything to do with the question per se, but that's where I went.
No, that was a perfect
Sustainability
answer.
fellowship is not restrictive. It's very, very so much what the fellow decides to make of it.
And for our last question, sort of connecting to your experience as the fellow, in your bio, you mentioned that you started a project called Seahawk Salvage. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Seahawk Salvage was essentially, I don't even know if it's still happening right now, but it's essentially an event that was designed to help reduce waste at the end of the school year during move out. So during all 4 years, I stayed on campus, and I would often stay for a senior week, serving as an usher. So I was there during move out, and I noticed how a lot of students would just get rid of very good items that could still be used, and just throw them in the dumpster or just pile them and hope that somebody takes them. So one of the missions or one of the goals that were outlined in the sustainability strategic plan that I helped finalize during my fellowship was to reduce the college's overall waste. And this project was designed to help do that. And so what we did, Brad Newkirk, as Tom Brewer mentioned earlier, he was my supervisor at the time. We reached out to a local business that's actually alumni owned to rent out these pods, which are basically just storage containers that we were able to put next to the dumpsters during move out, so that students had the option if they had items that they no longer wanted to make use of. Because I mean, people were throwing away furniture, books, clothes, things that were all in great condition that they were throwing away either because they found no use for it anymore, or they just couldn't take it in their vehicles back home with them, or whatever the case may be. A lot of things were getting thrown away that definitely could still be used. So we gave the students the option to put their belongings in a pod. And then after move out was over, we were able to redistribute those items that we collected to the St. Mary's community in general for free. And then everything else that didn't get distributed was added to inventory for the free store.
And
Awesome.
to that, we did continue the Seahawk Salvage in 2019. It was incredible to learn how many small refrigerators and microwaves were being tossed at the end. But we set it up so that we were able to donate a lot of appliances and clothing and furniture to staff and faculty. And then we held up, it ended up being right around Memorial Day weekend, I believe. We held a kind of like a yard sale. We weren't able to do it in 2020 for obvious reasons, but it's something that we certainly hope to bring back. Maybe this semester, we're not sure if we're going to be able to, but the idea that there are so many items that people are willing to toss at the end of college was something that we wanted to pick up on. So we would love to maintain that project, and I do have the contacts. Another St. Mary's alumni who runs the Worldwide Storage, I believe, is the company, the moving company. So that is still in the works.
Oh, well, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for answering the questions, Ivan.
Absolutely.
And now back to Maddie, or did she leave? Oh, no, she's here.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out Zoom things. Okay, yeah, thank you everybody so much. This was honestly, and thanks for everyone for sticking around. I know this was a long meeting, and we went over as well. I don't know why I thought we would have enough time to do so many things. I could easily talk to each of you for an hour and a half. That being said, I'm probably going to reach out to everyone and ask you guys some more questions and maybe see if we can like do some more, because I mean, this all started because I was kind of like, okay, I'm in this job now. What are people doing after they left this job? And I was like, okay, well, this information can benefit so many people. And I feel like there's so much more we could get into. I'm extremely inspired by all of you. And I think it was JJ who said it's important to know who came before you and who comes after you. And I think this was an amazing connection to have with alumni, especially people who did the fellowship. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Before we send everyone off, if anyone that attended the meeting has questions for anyone, I guess you can email them to me, Maddie, or Lindsay, and we can relay them. Or if people are comfortable with just like having people directly reach out to them, that's also a possibility.
Yeah. Thank you guys, and tell all your friends to watch this or to email us. They don't have to, email all of us. If they have one person they want to talk to,
I already had multiple students reach out to me asking if we were recording. So I know we didn't have that many attendees, but I know people were interested.
That's fine. That's fun to talk to you all and see some good faces again.
Okay, awesome. Everyone, remember to cheers Kate Chandler tonight. Okay, good to see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mare, is that your original?